Hey y'all, it is Cody Stoffer with the Playmakers Corner podcast as one of your co-hosts for today, and I'm joined here by another co-host here in Simon Villanos. Isn't that right, Coach V?
Yes, sir. Back at it.
And yeah, you know it because we're back with the Culture series here, continuing this trend of addressing topics or points or of contention in Colorado football that can either improve or maybe are disproving Colorado or delegitimizing it and ways that we can approach it. Obviously, listen to some of our past episodes where we've talked about higher classification bias. We've talked about high school flag football here. We've talked about coaching, mediocrity, 7v7, college programs. And yeah, just be sure to keep track of all of those as well that we've been releasing in May or June here. But today we have kind of a big umbrella topic here with some underlying points in, kind of parents slash money category here, as well as youth football being addressed here. And that's actually where we're going to start here is with our youth football kind of discussion. And, you know, as unfortunate as it is for, basically anything, it takes not only, emotional investment, mental investment, and time investment, but the issue that everything runs into on any level is fiscal investment, right? And I think that we kind of see that reflected a little bit here in how youth football programs are set up or, obviously funded as well. And it's not, Coach V and I were talking about this before. It's not a knock on necessarily individual teams, I would say, as much. And we're not saying like you are actively hurting football in Colorado by not giving money. We both, as people who are not financially well off by any means, understand, how difficult it is to keep heads above water here and to make a living. So, we're not oblivious to that. But it would also be arrogant to imply that there is no impact from, the investment level for Colorado football. Am I off kilter here, Simon, or is that a pretty fair way to phrase that?
Yeah, it's a complicated issue, right? I mean, we're not gonna just be telling parents like, "Hey, you need to start giving more money to your child's football program," because I think the other part of it is that I think there are some programs that don't know how to handle money as well as others and don't know how to make that money count. So there's that as well. Just because you give more money doesn't mean you're going to see your program or your local program get so much more better and your kids all gonna all of a sudden be a collegiate level or NFL caliber type of player. But obviously it does help to add money to programs and whatnot. I mean, money speaks. So there you go there. But I mean, we know that there are limits to that, obviously. And I don't know. I mean, there's no real way to be like, oh, this has to improve, by doing this. I don't know if there's a real solution to that. It just sucks because obviously Colorado is just kind of never going to have some of the facilities that, you may see a true powerhouse have, like a Texas, California, or Florida. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, to be honest with you. I think some programs could do it, but even then, I don't know. I think that's just a little bit too much to ask. Isn't that right, Cody?
Well, it's like in order to bridge that gap on the same scale would require a pretty ludicrous amount of investment, I'd say, because it's not like you're keeping up with the times. It's like you have to catch up with the times, and the times are well beyond us, honestly. And to ask only exclusively community members to do something like that puts it in a tough position. I think that obviously it would help if, and I don't even know how this works politically speaking amongst like how you're able to potentially receive donations from alumni or whatever, but more sport oriented alumni is probably the only thing that could close that gap. And even then, that is pretty far out, I would say, where, we would need some really top level league talent making it routinely and then giving back to their communities as well for that to even have a chance to close that gap, or at least in my opinion.
Well,
Without that's probably the most attainable, I guess. I don't know.
yeah, I mean, I think something, because this is something that a lot of teams don't have, but some football teams and programs, and I'm talking high school specifically, they could have booster like programs just for football. Because I think something that's gonna sound really selfish is that there's a lot of programs that share a budget with other sports. But, if you just have a booster program, boosters specifically just for the football program, maybe you'll see a little bit more growth there. I know Broomfield did it recently and they raised a whole ton of money. They know what they're doing with sponsors and whatnot. And that'll obviously go to their squad over there, who obviously won state last year. And so I know that hasn't come without some controversy, because everyone wants a piece of the pie. But in my honest opinion, if you have a booster program just set for football, then that's great. Now, how that's going to be perceived to the community here that's not used to that, it's probably going to be seen as like, oh, you're so Texas. Like, that's what's wrong with society. But, I mean, look, if you raise money for a specific thing, I don't think it's a bad thing to, have that money just go to that specific program. Is that fair to say, Cody? And maybe I'm just real nonchalant about it. I was used to interacting with boosters and, doing that whole thing, all those politics and stuff back in Texas. To me, that was a normal thing, and most football players know how to navigate that. But then coming to Colorado, it's just non existent. And so I guess if you really wanted to do something, maybe that, but there are no guarantees that that is successful, because you also need somebody who knows what he or she is doing with that. So yeah, there you go there.
Yeah, and I feel like from a seemingly Chasta's perspective, they try and do things pretty unilaterally, as far as like what they think is fair or not fair, maybe. And I don't know if that has an impact on anything like that. And I feel like that's kind of reflected in a lot of, different facets, whether, it's sharing stadiums or anything like that. But I think to kind of reel it in a little bit back to, not only in the investment, but I think also, you know, growth wise, you see a lot of athletes go to programs that are a little bit more invested or feel more invested in, or that are growing. I think that we keep coming back to this, but such a prime example is Cherry Creek, that not only is a really good school education wise, but I think is a school that really does invest in their athletics and in their facilities and in their coaching staff, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, it's a really large school, so there's going to be a different pool that goes there. It's going to be obviously set up different, but I also think that you have some decently notable alumni from there, and you have a little bit of name power as far as like Dave Logan being on a coaching staff and, stuff like that. You have like Olympians who've gone to Cherry Creek and whatnot. So I think that the setup there also impacts it a little bit. So not only who do they have in charge of being a booster and if they're competent, but also just kind of the base level setup, I think is something that impacts the investment as well as the growth of the program. Because I feel like even though Cherry Creek has been obviously large for as long as I can remember, I still feel that their growth compared to other schools feels pretty significant in comparison.
It also helps that they're rich, so it's a much
Yeah, the area and
better
the
off
setup.
neighborhood than I've ever experienced living in. So there's that as well.
Yeah, I agree, and you know I think that and then to further on that, obviously we talk about the fiscal investment here, but the fiscal investment has to be matched or met with the other forms of investment as well, as far as time and all that kind of jazz as well. So not only do you have to have someone who knows what they're doing, can get people to get money, but also it's one of those things where it's like, all right, we garnered X amount of money for the program, and then the people who are going to be putting their butts in the seat and want to see how that's used, there's also a little bit of pressure from that as well, and what that means. Like, what does that mean for the people who are giving it? I feel like, I don't know about in Texas, but in Colorado, I feel like tangible stuff makes a lot more sense to people who are donating to a program or buying something for a program, or like, you know, players here fundraising, selling like discount cards or butter braids or what have you. Um, it gets pretty watered down, I'd say, for like the streams, because it's like if I'm selling, like for example, in high school we had to sell Warrior cards, which were basically discount cards, right? They're like a coupon book that you can put in your pocket, and it's like, all right, if I'm trying to sell this, and my neighborhood borders like Heritage, and they're doing the exact same thing, nobody's gonna buy two of those, and it's putting a huge onus on the players to be fundraisers. Like literally, when I was doing this, I was going door to door. I was literally door to door selling this in high school as a freshman, as a sophomore, as a junior, and I don't remember if we did it as a senior. I think that we did some kind of other fundraising thing, but regardless, a lot of the onus was on the athletes, which I don't know. Simon, was that similar in Texas, or is it more up to boosters? I just genuinely am curious.
What, like going door to door and selling stuff for our funds?
For the program, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, dude. I mean, yeah, we did it. I did it in middle school, you know, and we got like new unis, I guess, which is whatever. But like, I'm just gonna be honest with you. The boosters usually took care of everything. We didn't have to do, because I don't know, like, why do that when you could be practicing or lifting? Is honestly my mindset there. Which is gonna sound really spoiled, but I'm just gonna be honest with you. I'm not gonna do that. And even when I played football here, I was like, can I just give you $200 or $300? Because I'm not gonna do this. This is stupid, and it's not. It's still stupid. I don't think it's something that actually makes teams a lot of money, in my opinion. What, like $2,000, $3,000? Like, give me a break, bro. Well, what is like I don't know. Is like we'll buy you new chin straps? Like, it's dumb in my opinion. And I just don't think it's a very efficient way of going about it. I mean, like I said, it's just set up a lot better in Texas, and even just our middle school programs. I mean, what? Let me think. My city alone, we had 3 senior high schools with high school football programs. And then we did it differently. We had junior high, which was basically just ninth and 10th grade. So we had our separate teams there, but that wasn't varsity. Our senior high schools were our varsity teams, at least in my hometown. So we had 3 of those. We had 13 middle schools all together. There was more than enough money that kind of trickled down from boosters, and paid for everything. We had bus rides everywhere. That was never a big deal. Paid for, I guess, our own stadiums and fees to use that too, I guess. Unis, equipment, that's a big one. They supplied us with pads and stuff like that. And that was really just through the boosters. Like, yeah, we did. I mean, there was that option to do that, but nobody really took it seriously. At least in my neighborhood, like who's gonna buy that from the neighborhood I come from? Like, come on, bro. That is. I'm not gonna say what it is, but Cody, you know what I was gonna say there. It's just, it's not the vibe where I'm from. It's just not, and that's all it is. And so I never really, I guess, understood it. I know they do it here in Colorado, but to me, it's just kind of a waste. If you really need $3,000 or $4,000, I don't know. Can't you like find a sponsor? But then that's the other thing. Teams don't have their own stadiums, so you can't just be hanging sponsors wherever you go. Because you don't have your own stadium. Because the other thing with us is that we would also have sponsors in addition to our boosters, and we just hang, whatever it is around our stadium, and boom, there you go. We get paid like what I don't know, like 2 or 3 thousand a sponsor, you know, for a little banner for all our 4 or 5 home games or whatever it is, plus playoffs. Playoffs, I think, is even a little bit more expensive. We charge more for that. So it's just, I mean, it's different cultures. Like I said, I don't think Colorado's ever going to get there because I also don't know how each high school is ever going to get their own stadium. I mean, you have district stadiums shared by like 20 teams, it feels like sometimes. And it's like, all right, well, nobody really owns this stadium when like 10 different squads play their home games here Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you know what I mean? So, like, that sponsor value, it wouldn't even be that high. I think, honestly, teams that are more out there, kind of like Broomfield or, smaller programs, could obviously benefit more from sponsor programs because they do have their own fields. But that is just me.
And obviously, I feel like if you have, the trickle down of this, right, from a community standpoint, from a player standpoint, you have your own stadium, you have your own place to pack fans, you have a consistent place to play, a consistent schedule, as far as obviously you'd have a little bit more flexibility with like, not having to play on a Saturday afternoon or something on the 5A level because the district stadium has been booked, then you just get more individuality. I feel like you get more buy-in, honestly, too, and a lot more ownership as a player of your program a little bit. At least what I can imagine from that. And even as an alumni, I'm getting excited for like a new district stadium to be built. And that's just a district stadium, so imagine what that could mean on, an individual high school's level to get that level of buy-in from I mean, obviously you're bought in because you're going to work too, but it's a nice little caveat. It's a nice little like carrot on the stick, I guess, to kind of feel good about or something else to be proud of. Defending our home turf, I feel like means a little bit more if it is our turf and not ours, theirs, and theirs kind of thing. But yeah, no, there's some pretty substantial differences that you listed there, and I think that the impacts are different. I honestly think that like a big one could be like more camps or something over the summer and the off season and participating in more of those and just getting a chance to compete more. Or like you said, obviously having more time to practice or something like that might be more beneficial. Well, is more beneficial than fundraising door to door like that. So I think that those are all really good points here.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing we could really do about it. This is kind of just, we're just kind of venting, I guess. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. I don't have the solution. I'm not a finances guy. And even if I was, I don't think there really is a solution. I think,
Eat the rich.
yeah, I mean, but even then, I don't think that would even be enough for the programs here in Colorado to still reach, levels elsewhere. And so that's kind of just something we have to accept. And so that does kind of just put a lot of pressure on coaches for sure, which is why we're so hard on them, and then athletes to kind of just work with what they have and still find a way to be great and compete with other states. Plain and simple, that's it. You know, I guess if you're a private school, you could do a little bit more. There's easier ways around that, but everyone's situation, even then, is still different. So I can't even. I don't know. It is what it is. But did you have anything more you wanted to add on before we kind of focus in here and talk about youth football and that setup? Because I think that is something that can be changed here, maybe for the better.
No, let's go ahead and dial it in here.
Yeah, so let's talk about youth football here. Look, on this episode, we're going to just talk about a lot of things. I'm not even going to lie. But when it comes to youth football in Colorado, I still believe that the setup could be a lot better. I was talking to Cody about this off air here, and it is crazy how much of an impact club teams have on the youth football level here. In Texas, there was an impact, but, the base level of it all always stayed the same and was always invested in and was the same pretty much statewide here. And I think the biggest thing that's kind of an issue here in Colorado is that there are a lot of middle school teams that do not have their own team from that middle school. And I think there's a lot of things you could point at being like, oh, well, they don't have the facilities, or, you know, where are they going to play their games, and whatever. There's a lot of those, right? But there are still just a lot of teams that don't have that. But then you could go 15 or 20 miles down the road and another school will have that, which just doesn't make sense to me. And so, in my opinion, I mean, you gotta unify, the middle school programs here around the state a little bit more. I don't know if unify. I think uniform. You gotta get them more in uniform. I would say. I think that's the more correct term there. Like, you just gotta get teams more with the program. You can't be having all these teams offering different stuff. I'm just gonna be honest with you. It doesn't make sense, and I think it honestly hurts the development of some student athletes. Like obviously, I'm just gonna be real. Like, youth sports up until like maybe fifth grade, whatever. It could be club teams. It could be your local Y city league, whatever. That is fine. But once you get to the middle school level, I think that's where some real changes definitely need to happen, because that is kind of like the starting ramp going into high school, right, Cody? And so it, I don't, doesn't it make sense for that to, be more similar to high school a little bit more and be more uniform throughout the entire state? Also, by the way, myself and Cody, we both work in youth sports, so just throwing that out there. But does that make sense, Cody?
No, absolutely. Because I think that you look at there are a few more examples I'm pretty sure out there, but you look at the predominant ones that I can think of, as far as Cherry Creek and Dakota Ridge, and these are successful programs in the state. These athletes get to play with each other for a very long time, and that makes a difference. You can't argue against that. That sustained teams or consistent chemistry, you can't argue against how important that is for the development of a team and the success of a team. Because every time I feel every time I've interviewed a Creek athlete, they talk about how long they've been playing with their teammates, and it's like, we've been playing together since the third grade. Oh yeah, I knew him because we were in the same program, and he was a couple grades ahead of me, or stuff like that goes a really long way, because then you have these younger kids who have access to learn things that these older kids in the same program are learning. You know what I mean? And obviously the buy-in, the uniformity, the pride. Like, I feel like there's a ton of pride for wearing a Cherry Creek uniform because they've been wearing one for so long. You know what I mean? And that combined with being able to play with your teammates, and then like a program philosophy that's the same from top to bottom, versus if you play 1 year on, I'm trying to think of like a Warriors team, and then you play another year on a Thunder team, and those coaches' philosophies are different. And on a Thunder team, your teammates could be going to Littleton, they could be going to Heritage, they could be going to Arapahoe, they could be going to Valor pending, they could be going to Highlands Ranch schools. And Warriors teams, that they could end up being distributed the same kind of way. So it gets pretty Mod Podgy here with the way that middle school structures are. And I don't know, I think it's just weird because I think of like LPS, for example. You have three high schools: Arapahoe, Littleton, and Heritage. And to try and argue that the facilities aren't there just kind of blows my mind because of how many middle schools have available field time and turf time. And all the middle school fields have been changed to turf, by the way. So it's like, Arapahoe's team like middle school program could be ran at Powell Middle School, honestly. And Heritage's could be ran at Euclid. And Littleton's could be ran at Goddard or Euclid or wherever. There's definitely at least field space for that level of program consistency. in my opinion. And then also, I do want to put out there that when I was in middle school, one of my coaches was on the staff at Littleton High School, and we were able to use Littleton's practice fields, and there were plenty of fields that we could use. Um, and we also used like the lights from the baseball field, and we had to practice later anyway. So, I mean, we could invest a little bit more from a school level or, from a state level, I guess, in just getting lights in places. And I mean, obviously, once again, that is expensive, but that is something that could be beneficial in some kind of way to progressing football, progressing buy-in of football, and to growing the sport of football as well. And that's only the physical elements. There's plenty of administrative things that can be modified for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. And look, I'm gonna put this out there. I don't expect every like high school program to have like a farm system. I don't. It would be nice though, and I would encourage like smaller programs to like, hey, if you're a smaller city or program or whatever, go ahead and do that. It doesn't make sense for I don't know, for kids to be playing for Windsor and then they play for a Loveland team or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Or they will be playing for Windsor, but they play for another squad that's nearby. It just doesn't, go ahead and make that uniform, right? But I think just kind of making sure that each middle school has a program or maybe if one can't afford it, there's still a way for them to play with another middle school nearby, or I don't know, just something where, there's a little bit more opportunity on the middle school level to play. And it's nothing against clubs. Club teams are fine, and they will be fine. But I think once you get to seventh grade, eighth grade, you need to be playing with the same group of kids. That's just what it comes down to. Like, it doesn't make sense for them to get split a bunch of different ways. And, there are some, I'm just going to be honest, there are some parents and coaches who are like, no, we want to win. We want to win. And I don't care if they go to 10 different high schools. We're going to play with the team we have right now. And that's, okay. I don't know if that's great for Colorado, but it is an idea. So there is that. But I just think in general, it just makes sense for kids, especially going into high school, to, start playing with players who will actually be their teammates moving forward. And just for everyone to be a little bit more uniform. I think there are a lot of ideas when it comes to middle school football in Colorado, maybe a potential state championship, all that stuff. I've heard those ideas out, but I think at this point, it's just kind of one step at a time. It just doesn't make sense to be splitting up kids, that are going to be playing together and whatnot. It's just, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. And just the way I look at it right now, there's a lot of reasons behind this. I would be very hesitant to allow my child to grow up here in Colorado playing football, just knowing how some youth programs are and knowing that they're not really feeding into any school. And I don't know. I would really look at it and be like, well, what's the point? Honestly, like, well, what's the point of him playing with this group? And they'll be like, oh, well, you want him to grow, and that's fine. I definitely get that. I'm an educator. I'm all about growth, but also, it can't just be about that, because also my child, at least personally, will not be an idiot when it comes to football. So I'm going to need you to provide a little bit more here. Or at least something comparable to what I had growing up, which wasn't even that crazy, in my opinion. And so for Colorado to be so behind the ball, to have so many different youth programs that are kind of just all over the place, like in the Springs, their programs are different from in Pueblo, at least for some Pueblo teams. And then those programs are different from what Denver's doing. And then you have Aurora, different from Littleton. And then you have like Thornton, not even on the same page as whatever. And then, not Roseville, Meade. I'm just thinking of like teams in Longmont. Sorry. Longmont and Loveland and Greeley, Windsor, they're all on different pages, I guess. Boulder is doing their thing out there. So Arvada. It just doesn't make sense. It needs to be a little bit more uniform, have a little bit more structure to it. Would definitely love to see more kids, play with teammates that they'll actually be with in high school. And now I know there's the natural, oh, well, kids are going to transfer. There's not much you could do about it. That's fair. But it would also still make sense to have at least 20-ish athletes go to the same school and play together at that same school because their middle school program at least provides them with a program to play with that is going to feed into a high school. You know what I mean? I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of all over the place with it, Cody. But that's just kind of what I think. I just think there are too many youth programs around the state that are just not uniform at all. And it does not make sense to me.
Yeah, no, it's definitely really scattered. And I think that organization is the biggest benefactor here. And obviously, as much as we want, you know, those like teams to stay the same, there's obviously benefits to being able to play with different players. But as far as team success goes, it's going to look way different if you've been playing consistently with someone for X amount of years, right? But yeah, I think that Colorado could. I think that the overarching thing here for the setup for youth football is that there needs to be an overarching kind of like body, I'd say, to regulate
Organization.
or organize youth football. Yeah, no, exactly. You know, and and one that, where they play by the same rules and, have leagues or divisions that are a bit more concrete and yeah, just having that kind of overarching group, I think would go a long way to, even potentially reducing super teams. Maybe. I mean, I can't promise that, but how will we know unless we try, right? Um, as far as just increasing that investment in your particular community. You've been playing with these guys at Kennedy for 7 years. So you want to go to Kennedy High School instead of go someplace where you think you'll have a better opportunity. You want to see it through with your guys here and stuff like that. And I mean, that has come to bite some players in the butt, that loyalty thing. But I think that if we can get that trending in the right direction and just have, you know, better parity in, high school football, I think that one way to address that is through youth football investment potentially and setup.
Yeah, I think Chassa needs to step in. Is all I'm gonna say there. And look, I know there's someone out there that's like, oh well, you haven't considered all the different neighborhoods and how they're different, and it's always been this way. And yeah, okay, all right, shut up. I know that it's different in every neighborhood. That's cool, and I'm not saying that every situation is gonna be a solvable one, but I just think more uniform around the state would make sense. Who would be better to do that than Chassa, who already controls the high school level? I think if they lay down some rules and, I don't know, maybe make or govern a league or a couple different divisions throughout Colorado for 7th, 8th grade football, that would make some sense. Now, I know why they won't, and I know there are people who are listening to this who also know why they won't, but it's because of money. I think there are some parents and organizations that, they this is kind of their livelihood, running their little club teams and whatnot, and that's cool. I'm not trying to hate or anything, but also I don't know. You really have to be providing a good service for me to buy into it. Like if you travel and stuff, that's great. I get that. I mean, when I was in middle school, I had teammates who also traveled, but that never interfered with middle school ball because that was always priority. The way we viewed middle school ball in Texas, it was like, hey, it's not varsity yet, it's not JV or whatever, but you're playing against rough makeups of teams that you'll be playing against in 2 or 3 years, and you will also be playing with rough makeups of teams and teammates that you'll be playing with against those other squads here in a couple years, and so that was always priority. Like, yeah, club is cool and traveling, that's great, but knowing your teammates and building chemistry was always more important. And I think if Colorado could focus on that a little bit more, that'd be great. I'd love for Chassa to, take a step forward and just take charge, but I just don't think they are capable of that. And that's my honest opinion. Even though it would be really helpful. Isn't that right, Kodey?
Capable and willing. They have to be both.
Yeah.
And they have to do it with conviction, otherwise it'll backfire even worse.
Well, they're
It
not
has to
willing because
be
they know they'll step
yeah,
on some people's financial toes. You know what I mean?
yeah, but it has to be definitive. It's not like, "Oh, we're going to do it over here but not over here." They can't 50-50 it
Yeah, you can't
cuz then
be.
it just makes it even worse.
Yeah, you can't be wishy washy with it. I mean, just gotta be like, hey, this is what we're doing. These are the programs involved in what we're doing. They're gonna be playing by chats and rules. All that great stuff. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I guess this is just another thing that maybe we can't handle, but it is kind of affecting how
We
players.
got to get a conversation started.
No, yeah, we definitely need a conversation getting started because I think that development of seventh to eighth grade, really sixth to eighth grade, is really important. I mean, you're kind of setting these athletes up for success or to face a little bit more adversity than they need by putting them in situations that may or may not be as beneficial to them. And so for the youth programs around the state to not be on similar levels or to be varying too much, that's definitely a dangerous game. And it puts us behind the eight ball pretty significantly when comparing us to other football states and whatnot. And it's honestly just more organization is what we want, you know. But we'll see if that happens. I don't think so, and like I said, I would be very hesitant to allow my child to grow up in Colorado playing football with the current organization that it is in. And that's me. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe you don't care what I think, but that is just what I think there. So there you go.
Simon said, "Me personally, I wouldn't let that slide."
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'd let them play for a competent program, youth and high school. So yeah,
Well, and there's levels to being competent, right? And I think that Simon, as long as you're okay with me moving from this most recent one to our next segment, I think that a huge part of competency is who's heading the program, right?
oh yeah, it does. Go ahead, Kodey. Go ahead and talk about it. I'll let you introduce this next segment here and talk about it a little bit more in depth.
Yeah. So obviously, in you know, depending on your position and your role with a team, I feel like that there's a little bit more regulation on who can or cannot coach, as far as high school football goes. But I definitely think once you start to look to youth football and middle school football and even younger than that, there is a huge kind of like gap, is what I'll call it. And, even debate within the coaching community on, you know, how qualified does a coach need to be? What qualifications do we need? Is there a national standard? Is there a state standard? Is there no standard? And you just see a lot of varying degrees on that as far as like what you are required to have to coach. If I remember correctly, when I coached at Greeley West High School, I had to have a first aid certification, which during the pandemic I got online. So glad I didn't really have to use that because there's no practice quite like watching an online video. But anyways, moving on from that, but there's different places in the country that you have to have a certain certification, you have to pass this kind of test, you have to have X amount of experience. But the problem, or a huge problem, I think, as far as coaches go, is just like the numbers for coaches, honestly. I think that as somebody who has ran leagues that do need volunteer coaches, it's hard to even get someone to volunteer coach, much less find someone who is actually competent and someone who's confident and in the right position to coach. So there's a lot of open spots. And so if you add more qualifications to those, then you probably end up with less teams and less opportunities for kids to play and less snaps, etc., etc., etc. Domino effect, absolute nightmare. And from what I know or remember, here in Colorado, we don't have like a specific coaching license that you have to have. You don't have to have some kind of certificate. You can just be a volunteer coach. And, not to say that coaches who are paid are necessarily better, right? But from an investment standpoint, it's like, all right, look, if a coach has taken the time to study sports coaching at a university, they have this certificate that they received from attending this conference, they have X, Y, and Z licensures. I would probably sign my kid up to play for that coach's team more so than Joe Schmo, even if he's closer to my house, right? Or if they're closer to my house. And this is for any sport, right? But I think especially in football, we just run into this consistent, well, no. In every sport, we run into this consistent problem on, the ups and downs. And this is maybe even just another talking point where we get the discussion going where it's like, all right, where are our competent coaches? They're not using their time on this because they're not going to volunteer. And now we're stuck with incompetent coaches. Where are qualified coaches? They're somewhere that is paying them or in a community that can't afford to pay them. So you have like this just another angle of gap here. And I mean, overarching theme of the money episode, fiscal gaps, right? Like, obviously, you're just going to see these differences from time to time. And it's a really tough thing to wrestle with, not only on the high school level, but then especially if we're looking at youth football. How are we supposed to get all of these programs qualified coaches? And is it even possible? What sacrifices have to be made? Does it make a difference if you put a price range on it? Do you get a better coach? Is it best if it's somebody who just wants to give back to the community, who formerly played football? And I mean, there's a lot of different things that say different stuff, obviously. I mean, look, if you have somebody that has just watched like only sport movies and, is approaching coaching from that direction, you're probably not going to get somebody that is well equipped for, especially these modern generations. They need a different level of coaching. You can't coach, you know, grown men or even children or young athletes the same way that Vic Lombardi was coaching, right? Like, it's just, it doesn't work the same way. And so if you have someone that is studying recent trends, is up to date on the know-how on how to deal with, kids of this generation and some of their needs and ways to communicate with them, that's obviously going to have a way different impact than a volunteer who's just yelling all the time. Like I said, I'm probably just talking myself in a circle here a little bit. So, Simon, I kind of want to just hear your input here on, what are the qualifications of a coach? What do you think they need? And, I think at the bare minimum, if you're hiring coaches or you're paying coaches, you probably have a better chance at getting someone who is quality. Is that? I mean, it's not going to be right 1,000% of the time, but I feel like there's some merit to it where you can at least choose to be a little bit picky, maybe.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you have the money to hire a coach, you kind of just hope that you don't hire an idiot. Now, is that true all the time? No, because there's plenty of high school coaches in Colorado. So there's so there's that. But, there's plenty of high school coaches in Colorado who shouldn't be coaching is what I mean there, but are hired and paid regardless. So I'm just going to put that out there. So it doesn't always guarantee that you are going to get a good, coach just because you pay for one. And even then, I mean, I don't even know how to approach that. I mean, you have to raise funds for that and probably have to have a more uniform program or athletic program to even approach that, But yeah, I mean, obviously paying coaches would go a long way because coaches are going to care a little bit more. You know, if their kid is not on the team or whatever and they're just knowledgeable, they want to get paid for their knowledge. Colorado is a very, uh, this might not be the most popular take, but it's very transactional when it comes to training and coaching, in my honest opinion. The private, I guess, coaches and trainers out here, they make bank and they make good money, and that's good for them, but it doesn't come without a price. And so if you can't pay, then you're not going to get him. And that's just plain and simple. And so that kind of just leaves you with what you have, which is volunteer coaches. And look, it's hard to ask a volunteer to really take this thing seriously because, I mean, there's really nothing in it for them. They're doing this thing for free. So I can't really hold them if they're not the most knowledgeable. Now, it'd be great if they were like, I don't know, USA football certified. I know in our leagues down here in the Springs, that is something that at least head coaches, I want to say, have to be certified in, as well as the usual first aid and concussion protocol stuff. But, being USA football certified, at least that's a standard that's out there. But also, I mean, you got to have coaches that really want it, you know, and are willing to use their own money to go do that stuff because it's not like it's cheap at all, and that just comes with the standard of football. I mean, if you want to have a certain standard, you got to pay for it. I don't think it's fair to ask a volunteer to be like, hey, you got to do all these things. By the way, thank you for working for free, but you also have to hit all these qualifications because I just don't think that's a very reasonable thing to ask out of a volunteer. Now there are some communities that have more able volunteers than others. That's fine, but I mean, you kind of get what you pay for. That's just what it is. And like I said, Colorado just very transactional when it comes to things like this, especially, coaches that know that they have a lot of knowledge. They'll flex that a lot as that is kind of their bargaining chip to get paid more, which, I'm not looking down on or anything, but that's just how it is here in Colorado's plain and simple, right, Kodey?
No, yeah, and I mean, say what you will about it, but at the end of the day, if they know more, then I feel like it's their right, honestly, to flex that and to leverage that. I mean, that's how it is in any industry, right? So why should it be any different? I mean, obviously, in an ideal world, we're just doing what we're good at and what we're passionate at, but we all got bills, right? So,
Capitalism. I mean, if there's a demand, you gotta get
yeah.
paid justly for that
Oh,
demand. So, that's just how. Not to get too political, but that's just kind of how it is. And in Colorado, I mean, we're already so far behind the eight ball, and coaching is so bad as it is, and the standard is
and it's
below.
so underpaid.
I shouldn't say the coaching all around is so bad. I shouldn't say that, but I would say the overall standard is so low that it really makes it easy for a private coach to just walk in and be like, hey, I know more than your OC. Come through and actually get good coaching and, pay me to do that. And that kind of just creates a market where, I mean, those coaches aren't going to go be an OC somewhere else because that would be more a benefit for that program than themselves. They could get paid more being a private coach, plain and simple. That's it. The private coaching business here in Colorado is booming if you know what you're doing. You know, um, yeah,
And I want to say, in contrast to our first go at this episode, it's not on these, it's not on the private sector to fix the public sector. You know what I mean? I feel like
no,
last episode where we got, when we did the culture episode, just the episode, I feel like we were like, hey, it's your job to, or at least I was like, hey, why aren't we seeing these guys on sidelines? And it's like, I'm obviously older now and I have to live through the nightmare that is capitalism and watch me get canceled for that by some of our viewers. But anyways, um but it's just they're just playing the game and they're playing it the way that they can the way that they can win. And we can't get mad at them individually for that. We really can't. It's not their job. It's It's no one person's job to fix it, but it is culturally something that can be addressed through organizations, through, the leveling or consistency of priorities across the state in football, youth football, and high school football as well. And, it's something that, like, it's going to take uniform change for, the coaches that are the most qualified to even consider stepping onto a sideline. Especially because a lot of them have been on a sideline before, too. I feel like that's worth mentioning. And so it's like, if you're looking at it from giving back to the game kind of way, they've already kind of done that, but they're arguably giving back to the game more by being able to develop these prospects better than the coaches that are on the staff because of the standard possibly could.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're not gonna blame the individuals. You gotta, you gotta pay your bills, and you gotta, do the things that make you happy. I know Colorado, they have two professional teams that are championship squads, and the Nuggets and the Avs. So I already know those tickets are way more than they probably should be, and so you gotta do what you gotta do to enjoy life too, right? And so I'm not gonna, I don't know. I'm not gonna, I guess, hold those private coaches accountable, because at the end of the day, it's like, well, shoot, you gotta make money. Is it right? Do we like it? No, probably not. That's our personal opinion. But do we understand it? Yeah. And so that's just what it is. I think the only thing you could really change at this point, I guess, is the structure of it all. And at the end of the day, I mean, the only way to get more quality coaching is probably to pay more, right? Now, but there are some coaches, though. I'm just going to throw this out there. There are some coaches that don't get paid like that, and they also don't coach like that either. So we're now, I don't know. So I guess we're just kind of stuck at a
We
point.
got the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, I don't want to go that far, but we're kind of just stuck at a point where, good coaches, they're at a premium, and I think programs need and communities need to be more willing to invest in that. If they want to see Colorado football improve, it's on them. There's only so much we could do and influence and whatnot. But at the end of the day, you gotta, I mean, you gotta put the pressure on your own programs, on your local communities and whatnot, and fight for change. It can't just be us. I'm just gonna be honest with you. And there are some programs that have, since we dropped our very first culture episode all those years ago, who have pressured coaches out and who have hired really good coaches who are probably going to be contenders or make their squads more into contenders this year than they ever were before. And so that's definitely a huge deal there. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can feel myself getting on a tangent, so I'm gonna kind of stop myself here. But I mean, it does come down to the community pressuring, schools and programs to change for better, and for coaches to actually improve. We kind of got to work with what we have, what's there. And so if they're stuck in their ways and whatnot, that's never gonna help Colorado. And I don't know, maybe it's already too late, and it is what it is. This is the pessimist in me saying that. But I don't know. Maybe we change one program at a time, and it takes 300 years to, not be running the same basic offense. So, but even
And
then, I don't know.
that proper pressure can come from the community itself, and specifically who's probably, I'd say, the biggest stakeholders, if we want to phrase it like that, for these programs and for finding coaches to help their investment, aka their child, succeed here, is the parents, right? And so I think that something that can be helped, obviously, organizationally, I think that there are things that can be addressed to improve the culture and stuff like that. But I do think that, talking about parents in general, I do think that attitude wise and just kind of focus and objectives wise and understanding wise, there could be a lot of adjustments made on the parental level. Now, I say this as somebody who works in youth sports, grades as young as pre-K up to 8th grade here. And, as somebody who also, for the podcast interacts with a lot of high schoolers, somebody who is coached on the high school level, and, somebody who obviously went through the system here in Colorado, right? As I start to address this. And, I think that there's like I can't tell you exactly where it is, right? But there is a line somewhere in here on what parents should be concerned about, and maybe what parents shouldn't be concerned about, and when to speak out and when not to speak out. If your team is unsuccessful running a prehistoric offense, you should probably get involved and, try to make some waves of change. If your school is at the center of a scandal where children are being permanently scarred, which is something that we've covered on this show before, amongst like hazing, bullying, and other misconduct, you as a parent should get involved and demand better from your program. Now, I'd say that in instances where, a coach here, it's they score a touchdown, it's 1 point to tie, 2 points to win. They go for two. It's a fine play call, and they end up losing this game, right? And it's the first time. Maybe you shouldn't go to like the AD over something like that and like cause a mass grievance, right? I think that there's certain parts that maybe parents should get involved in, and there are some things that parents shouldn't get involved in. I think if it feels mediocre, I don't know what just happened there. I'm gonna just roll with that. Mediocre here. Then, I think that is the time to speak up. Oh my gosh, we've had 7, 4, and 6 seasons in a row. Yeah, something should probably change, don't you think?
Well, Kodey, should we make a do's and don't list when it comes to parent involvement?
Should we make a
it might be just simpler to just
graphic?
Put it straight forward. Hey, you should.
Hey, I'm gonna put that on You're Not Supposed To and You're Supposed To by E4O.
Yeah.
But are we just gonna we're just gonna make this live, right?
What do you mean? Oh, yeah, right now? Yeah, we're not going to make a graphic.
All right, I got the yellow legal notepad out, all right?
So do's and don'ts as a parent.
I might post this on the story as just completely out of context. But anyway.
Yeah, so okay.
Do's and don'ts.
As a parent or guardian, sorry, I don't want to not include.
Yeah, parent or guardian.
Some people out there. But do's or don'ts as a parent or guardian if your child is playing football, all right? Or I don't want to say youth sports, but football specifically, all right? Don'ts. Don't complain about it. Don't complain about your child's playing time. I don't know. I think that's kind of a big one, right, Kodey? That is not one. That is not a battle that I would be willing to die on a hill for. Now, if it's really that bad, maybe, I guess, but most of the...
We're talking on the high school level?
We could talk about all levels. Because I think still, though, like, I don't know. I would still say don't, because even most of the time, you could still complain about them not getting playing time. It is extremely rare that any coach is going to be like, oh, yeah, I'm going to play him in like 50 minutes. Like, no. If you complain...
Yeah, it's not going to change it.
No, if anything,
really.
It sentences your football player to the bench permanently, if I'm being completely honest with you. So, honestly, yeah, that is a don't, because it's not going to help, right?
Yeah, it's a complaint about it. No, that's totally
All
right.
So, first, don't. No playing time. Do we just want to go back and forth until we've covered a solid amount? I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Do you have another don't or do? We could go either way.
I think that do, as far as, this is going to look different for everybody, right? But I do think that, you should, and obviously this is kind of like a unilateral thing, so this could apply to other sports too. This specific do, but you do got to show support and investment in whatever that interest is. You don't have to pay for them to go to camps all across the country, but, if your kid comes home and is like, hey, I ran like an in at practice, it would help if you knew what that meant, honestly. Like, you don't need to become an expert yourself, but I do think showing interest, showing engagement, I think is going to go a very long way. And then also, once again, this just depends on the situation. But if you can make it to games, that's obviously a do, is to show investment or interest in that passion, whether that's for a program or for your child.
So do support.
Yeah, that's an easy way to
All
put it.
right.
Not show it. Do support all
All right.
caps,
Okay.
no
Well,
cap.
I got another don't here. Don't
We're
complain.
gonna come up with don'ts easier than
No, I
do's.
know, I know. I mean, I just want to make sure I get it all out there before I forget. But this is a big one. But don't complain about physicality. As in, don't complain about the game being too rough. It's football, and this is more, I guess, targeted at the youth level. And I'm gonna be 100% honest. I do not have a child. All right, I don't even have a partner to even talk about this with, which might even provide a whole different perspective. But I would never go to a coach or governing body or whatever and be like, "Oh, hey, don't you think the kids are a little too rough out there?" That is not the vibe, right, Cody? As an organizer of youth sports, you could attest to
Yeah,
that, right?
because guess what? Because guess what? The officials are looking out for it, all right? The officials know the rules, they know what they're looking for, and that is the officials' call, right? Like, because if I for some reason as a coach was like, "Yeah, tackle with your head straight down" or something stupid like that, the refs are going to do something about it and they're going to flag it until it is done, until it's done, right? And I hate to tell y'all, but football in any capacity has physical elements to it. It really does. And yes, that includes flag football, that includes sevens. Like, there's still contact that's going to be a part of the game of football with or without pads, because it is a fast sport, right? And it's one where you do run full speed and you are interacting or engaging with others, right? So no, I definitely agree with that. Don't complain about it, because they're they're looking at it. They're not like, officials don't get together before a game and coaches don't get together before a game and like, we should just send, these kids out there to die, bro. Like, what? If you think about that process, like just saying that out loud, that's some of the mentality that is approached with, organization in youth sports. And that's just bizarre to say out loud, right? Isn't that's insane?
Yeah.
That's insane to, like, I feel like that's low key what is being implied when you complain by this.
Well,
And
here, go ahead.
that's kind of a stupid implication.
I I
Sorry,
I
go ahead.
will give this perspective, okay? Because I know there are some parents who were not football parents, or I don't know, were not football players or athletes, or they weren't a person that supported a football player like that, and maybe their child is the first one that they support, right? When it comes to that stuff, and so when you see them taking hits and playing football, honestly, I would say a lot of the time it looks a lot worse than what it is. But to an outsider, it probably looks horrible. It probably looks really horrible. And, I could understand you just being emotionally distraught and wanting to just vent, but do not vent to your child's coaches or to higher ups above them or to event organizers. I think that is something that you could do with your close friends who are not involved with all that, and or partner. I think that is their job, but it will affect
Can I counter with a do?
it will affect your child's playing time if that happens. But yeah, go ahead and counter with a do here.
Well, I think, and arguably, I kind of addressed this with the first one, but do educate yourself. Like, if you are new to the sport of football, take a serious look at it. This is not volleyball. This is not, even basketball. Like, this is a physical sport, and you got to know what you're signing up for. There are studies everywhere about this. There are, like, if you want to, it is easier if you're an outsider to convince yourself to not let someone sign up for football than it is to sign up for football. I think, like, if you're trying to be objective about it, right? And so I think that you need to really look into it. You need to weigh the pros and cons and decide from there. So that way you don't end up in this situation where you're like, why isn't my kid playing? Why is the game seeming so physical? It's like, all right, my kid's not playing because they have two left feet and they're getting lit up because they have two left feet. You know what I mean? And I think that educating yourself is going to put you in a better position of helping a community and a program run smooth and proper. And if you do know more about football and the involvement and stuff like that, then you're actually more likely to see things that are wrong, that are more legitimate concerns, I would say, than if you don't and you're just pointing out things that are like, well, yeah, that's a part of it. So educate yourself uh, all the time. Obviously, I'd say that I'm somebody who's learning all the time and learning new things about football, even having covered it for as long as I have. But you do have to be in like an educated and not don't be. I don't know if this counts as a don't, but don't be ignorant. You know what I mean? So
Kodey, just in
the
general, just saying don't be stupid, and that's the whole list.
you said it, not me.
That's what you no. That's what you said. Well, okay, here. I do wanna add on one more. Yeah, I would say this is a pretty big don't here. Maybe there's some room for discussion here. Sorry, unless you're not done yet, Kodey.
No, that was the point. Do educate yourself.
And yeah, that is important. It doesn't hurt to educate yourself. That also means talking to people who are a little bit more experienced than you in this thing, that are maybe removed from your situation so that you could get multiple points of view. But anyways, don't. Oh, this is a big one. I know it's going to ruffle some feathers. But don't accuse the other team of being dirty or cheating, and especially complaining to the refs or higher ups or coaches about that. And then without, oh my god. And then this is another thing to add on, because without a doubt this almost happens every football season in Colorado. I guarantee it, almost every week. Don't pull out the I'm just looking out for my child's safety and the safety of these kids. All right, bro. Oh, all right. That's enough. That's already too much. Because here's the thing, we've seen plenty of parents, yell at refs and be like, "You gotta protect our kids, and you need to do a better job, and they're playing dirty." All right, okay, whatever, cool.
It's disingenuous, is what it is
Oh
to
yeah,
me.
you just don't trust them.
Well, I feel like you're not looking out for the kids. Like, you're not. I have never seen a parent say that for the team that they're not rooting for.
Oh yeah, it's always when they're losing
don't think
too.
I've ever seen that. It's only for their team, and it's only when they're losing. That is the only time I have ever witnessed it. If someone was actually concerned about safety, if they saw a kid from the opposing team get lit up with a dirty illegal hit of some kind, then they'd be hollering for that flag to be thrown on their own player. And I have not seen that once. So I think that obviously you shouldn't be shouting that stuff, but you definitely shouldn't be disingenuous. Like, I guess just to magnify the point a little bit, don't be disingenuous about your intentions and be like, "Oh, I'm concerned for that safety." No, you're not. No, you're not. You're concerned about winning.
At least 95% of the time it is that, in my opinion.
And you'll yell whatever you need to try and get there. That's what I've seen. And I've watched, Simon and I have been to a lot of football games, and we've been around a lot of crowds. I've been around a lot of crowds that I can't stand. So, and this is a huge part of it. I'm so glad you brought, oh my God, my heart rate. I'm going to have a cardiac issue in this chair, Simon.
Well, here, I need to add on another part to that, because it's not just about harassing refs and stuff, which, I mean, you shouldn't, because there's already a ref shortage. So if you do that, you are definitely a part of the problem when it comes to the ref shortage. But also, it's not good to teach your child to have that type of victim mindset, because there are, oh my God, there are plenty of children here in Colorado who have the mindset of, oh, well, the refs were always going to cheat us. or that team is just always going to get calls going their way. Or, well, this or that, blah, 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 it's always stacked against us. That's such a victim mindset. That's why there's not more great football players coming out of my state, coming out of Colorado, because you have so many kids who are just kind of taught from an early age that, cheating and stuff like that is just something natural that's going to happen, and that you can't do anything about it but complain, because that's all you're doing is complaining. And kids see that all you're doing is complaining. You're not doing too much more about that. And I'm just going to be honest with you. Look, if I had a child and they ever complain to me about refs or cheating or whatever, I'm just going to be like, hey, son, daughter, whoever, you got to suck it up. There's plenty of cheaters in life that continue to cheat and be successful and get away with it. You need to find a way to get it done, because the last thing you're going to be is the little whiner that keeps complaining about this stuff and can't find a way to get it done. All right? So you got to learn how to play with it. Look at yeah, I'm not gonna get too political there, but I'm just gonna say, hey, look at the politicians we be electing. Plenty of cheaters, plenty of bad people who probably shouldn't be there, but they are. That's life. You gotta make do with what you have, and you gotta find a way to overcome it by just complaining to people all the time and being like, oh, well, you didn't win because of this, this, and that. That's not good enough. You didn't win because you weren't good enough in this moment and you couldn't find a way to get it done. I think that's a big mindset that, oh, see, I told you, Cody, I wasn't going to rant on parents, but here I am ranting on parents. That's a big mindset that I think is solely the fault of a lot of parents in Colorado. And like I said, I'm not a parent, but from an outside perspective, I see too many parents making excuses for their kids from an early age, and that's why they never feel like they could beat Cherry Creek or Valor. Oh, now I'm getting specific.
It's an accountability
yeah,
thing. It's a huge accountability thing, and I think that at least, I think that the biggest lessons of accountability that I learned as an adolescent through the game of football came from the coaches that just were straightforward with us. After the game, we go over to our huddle and they're just blunt. They beat us. They did X, Y, and Z better than we did A, B, and C, and that's why they won. We need to go back to our drawing room. The coaches showing accountability to, I could have, repped this play more in practice from a practice plan standpoint, and I think that there is more success to be had with that. My first 10 plays of a script could have been better. When I hear coaches having accountability, even if, to kind of holler back to hired or volunteer, if I hear accountability from coaches that show some sort of knowledge and expertise, I have incredibly more respect for them than even if you're a coach that's been around for 18 years and you're like, well, the refs are the reason we lost the game. I don't see this as much from coaches, by the way. I just want to put that out there. But as a parent, I feel like in situations like that where your athlete comes back and is like, there's nobody likes to lose, right? And you're a parent, I don't think the first thing you should say is like, oh, well, they recruit at that middle school program, or they recruit at that high school program, or they always have the refs on their side, or this, that, or the other. Like, that victim, you're so right. I mean, don't be a victim, bro. Like, that's so annoying. And a lot of it's just, and you're not showing any accountability, because if I'm going to be on the car ride home with my parent, I'm probably not going to and they're doing all that where it's like, well, I feel like my parents were very like, well, that was the game, this could have gone better, that was a crazy catch that so-and-so on the other team had. That was a really big play, that's probably not going to happen every time, but you could, they were just very kind of I don't want to say nonchalant. That's not the right word. But, they were very, they weren't accusatory or telling me that I was on the wrong team or this, that, or the other. Like, my parents never, after a game against Creek, were like, well, it's Creek. Like, that was definitely an energy that was like brought into the locker room by kids whose parents said, "Well, it's Creek,"
That's
versus
facts.
like getting excited to pop that balloon or something. You know what I mean? And I think that's a great don't there. Um,
Yes.
don't whether it's don't be a victim or don't lack accountability, either one of those are huge. And man, I'm off the rails right now. But Simon, do you want to go back to back here while I like gather my mental here?
Yeah. Do teach your child how to handle losing and winning. Equally, I would say. I think that's kind of a tough one to do. Wait,
Sportsmanship.
what? Oh
Sportsmanship.
yeah, well yeah, sportsmanship, but I think teaching your child how to handle losing and winning is definitely important because there's going to be natural emotions that come with both winning and losing. You're obviously going to be happy when you win, and you're obviously going to be disappointed or sad or whatever, angry when you lose. Positive and negative emotions, right? I think both of those things are going to be tied here when it comes to the outcome of games. You know, I think it's natural to feel that way. I'm not telling you to like teach your child to not, show any emotion. But, in winning and losing, you got to have the same type of energy. Similar energy. I don't want to say same type. You got to have similar energy, right? Don't be the don't teach your child to be the one that's talking all the trash, and then at the end, they ain't talking, or I don't know, they just not bringing that same energy. You gotta teach your kid to be able to handle both graciously, and I think that's just a maturity thing in general. There are going to be kids anyways that are going to do what they want. That's fine. But as a parent, it obviously, or guardian, it doesn't help for you to encourage them to be like, yeah, you should feel like you got to go to the parking lot and confront somebody and tell them, I'm going to see you in the lot later. Like, there are, there are even some adults who, still have that mentality when it comes to seeing you in the lot later. And so, it helps to, teach a child how to handle both winning and losing. It's okay to feel some type of way, but the actions you do have to be, more mature than what you are feeling. Because you could actually control your actions. What you're feeling is what it is. And it's not the most productive to just kind of shut it away. Is that fair to say, Kodey? I feel like that's kind of a loaded one. There's a lot that goes into that, but I just wanted to kind of put it out there.
No, I think that that's an important one. And I think that while Simon or myself are not yet parents and aren't going to be anytime soon, I think it is important to note that we have both been children and we have both been youth athletes in football, right?
We were both
So,
human beings, so we know. But
well,
yeah, go on.
that too. But I mean, just because I feel like I keep drawing back to this, if I was not sportsmanlike, winning or losing, even something as simple as checkers or chess, like the adults in my like support group or however you want to, I don't know what the support system. Yeah, I think that's the term here. Big sociologist guy right here. But anyways, my support system would not play me if I had like crossed a line. If I had been like braggy and really kind of like rubbing it in that I was destroying you in, even something as simple as like a board game, they wouldn't play me again. They'd be like, why would I want to play with you if you're going to be like that? And then if I was like throwing some kind of fit or temper tantrum after losing in a game or a contest, why would I want to play with you? I'm not going to play with you. And so I think that reinforcing, like Simon said, be similar-ish. I mean, obviously, after you win, you're allowed to be happy. Like, what? We're not telling you to be a bunch of Kawhi Leonards out here with no emotion. But, I think it is important to show grace in losing, and you're still allowed to be frustrated, obviously, and you're still allowed to work through that because, you know, like, as a parent, see what your youth athlete needs as far as like, do they need space? But like, they should still probably be high-fiving the other team at the end or something. And then, in winning, you know, to also have a grace with it. Either way, I think the word graceful is a pretty good one for the do here.
Yes, and I don't think.
Gosh, this
Go on.
This list could be a whole
No,
episode.
it
But
definitely
go
could
ahead.
be. And I honestly don't have too much more to add. I just wanted to add on the ones that I've seen over the years, because there's plenty of don'ts. I could also say don't yell at a child to get up when they are down on the football field, because I've
Yikes, that's really cringe when you do that,
the it
parents
okay, so
or
it
guardians.
sounds like that's a very like out there thing, like once in an every. It's really not. Like every football season, I've won to. Jesus Christ, every game, well, not every game, but like every season, there's at least 2 or 3 games where that happens without fail, almost. And in the years that we have done this, that has happened without fail, and it probably will this season as well. So,
And it's usually when a if a fan base is quote perceiving that the other team is pretending to be hurt, end quote, which I think that pretending to be hurt is a like people who argue that people pretend to be hurt like a lot. I think that's a really stupid arguing point. Um on any level of competition.
yeah, even if it's true
Because
though, because I ain't gonna lie,
it will happen once in a blue
yeah,
moon
yeah.
for
You
sure.
you shouldn't
But
ever accuse a
you need
child
to
of
err
that.
on the side of yeah. You should not that, I'm telling you, as far as things to be wrong about, that is not one where because we've seen that. I feel like Simon, you and I went to a game this last season where they're like get up, and then the athlete had to end up being like stretchered off the field, and it was like oh wow that's interesting, huh?
Yeah,
Like
so my little brother
yikes.
went with us to that game, Joel. And it's not like he hates like, hanging out with me or whatever. But he went to that game with me, and then every time I asked like, "Hey, do you want to come with to another game? I'll pay for you and whatnot." He'll be like, "Nah, man, I'm not trying to deal with parents like that." And that's really telling from a whole adult too, who's like, "Hey, I think it's kind of weird that parents are yelling at children, at injured children to get up." Um, and I'm not trying to put myself in a position to get mad at that parent, even though it's wrong. And so that's beside the point though. There's plenty of don'ts. There's plenty of don'ts. That's one I'm gonna throw out there, but that's really all I got for now. Unless you have one or
I
two more
got
to add on, Cody.
I got one for
Go ahead.
don't, and I think that this is a really really important one for Colorado football as a whole. Don't be complacent. Don't be complacent because that I think is where we start to see that this is an area where if you're not complacent, this is where we can get this is where we can liquidate the wing T hopefully. I think that complacency is what allows the Stone Age to still exist here. I think that this is what allows a lot of programs to have that victim mindset. I think that this is what keeps Colorado football in its spot, and that's being complacent because if the parents and the community members are complacent with where they're at, what are the kids going to do? I feel like they're just going to reflect that, right? They're going to reflect that energy. They're going to be fine with, you know, like obviously you should still celebrate being league champs or conference champs and stuff like that, obviously. But I think that a lot of complacency is restricting the trajectory of Colorado football.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely agreed. I mean, honestly, what is the point of being successful right now when you're not preparing your children to be successful in the future? You know what I'm saying? It's giving big, like, oh, let's just let our children peak in high school vibes. I'm going to be honest with you.
Ouch.
That's like in support of me, right? Not like, okay.
Yeah, no, no, no. I'm that's yeah, no, 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 no. That's like a ew. What kind of philosophy is that? But it's like you're right though. Simon be spitting right now.
Yeah, nobody wants to have a child that just peaks in high school and then they don't do anything for the rest of their life. And that's kind of where some football programs are, right now, where they're not being held to a higher standard because they are successful right now. even though that might not prepare them for later. So that's a big one, and I think there are too many adults and parents that, how should I say this, that safeguard the mediocrity. Yeah, that's a good way of saying it, and that's what I'm going to leave it at right there. So there you go. There, that pretty much ends this segment of two non-parents telling parents how to act here. Uh, yeah. So I don't know how
I
that's going to
I
be
think that obviously
going.
there's gonna probably be some blowback on it, but at the same time, until you try and abide by these do's and don'ts, how are you gonna tell us that you're wrong? Um,
Yeah, I'm going to be
yeah,
honest.
and there's a way
Go ahead.
there's a way to approach these things. Like complaining and whining is one thing. Mentioning something is completely different, right?
Yeah.
Because and that's exactly how coaches interact with officials on the field. Or I think some of the best is like go up to the ref. Hey, I think that 72 is doing holding. Can we keep an eye out for that? There's like a way to show like respectful conflict that isn't whining or crying about something. You know what I mean? Um, so if you have a concern, there is a way to address it without being a whiny, without you know being a crybaby about it.
Yeah, and if you're not happy with our non-parent perspective, you know, whenever I have, or I guess probably Kodey has their first child, we'll make a podcast right after that, and then it'll be from a parent's perspective. So I guarantee you we'll be
It's gonna
right
be called
regardless.
Parent Corner or something. I
What'd
don't
you
know.
say?
Playmaker's parenting. I'm trying to come up with
Parenting's
the
corner?
offshoot name. Yeah, parenting's corner, parents
Oh, look
corner,
at
something
me.
like that. Bro, you basically said what. Anyways,
Parenting's corner.
I think we're off the
And
rails
I'm your
here.
host, Simon
Uh,
Villanos, aka Coach V on Parenting's Corner. Yeah, I don't have too much more.
and I'm your daddy here on parenting's corner. What are you Can we keep the keep it? We gotta keep it.
I don't like that. I do not. You okay? Close this thing up. We said all we had to do. This was basically our closing episode of this series, anyways, where we could just kind of rant and close this culture series. So thank you for rocking with us. But you could close this one up, Kodey. Yeah, you got it.
Simon is calling the police on me after committing that vocal felony. But anyways, um, I think that obviously this episode was really important, and I think that it just brings up a lot of talking points. I think that the last do that I'll send us off here is do discuss, do have conversations, and do have the intent of advancing Colorado football. So do discuss amongst your communities and stuff and communicate and, generate some wheels and generate some traction to the movement of advancing Colorado football. And with that being the last do, I'd say for that segment and for this episode and for this culture series, be sure to double back and listen to our other episodes that included college programs in Colorado with Coach V, myself, as well as Gideon, coaching here in Colorado with myself and Simon, 5A mediocrity with Simon, myself, and Gideon. Simon and I talked about 7v7, then obviously racism in Colorado football with Coach V, Gideon, and myself. Same with higher classification bias, and then girls high school flag football. This is not in the perfect order of when those came out, since I am reading from our template here. But and then obviously, thank you for listening to this episode in our Colorado football culture series. I think that this was really well done as a series, and this is something that we can expect to be discussed about, regarding Colorado football culture every once in a while. I don't want to put an exact timeline on that, but this is our second go at it, and obviously there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to listen to, so please listen to all that. Try and gain some knowledge, gain some different perspectives, and just really interact with a lot of people in the Colorado football community so that we can make Colorado football better as a state and as a community. But with all that in mind, we do have all of that content that you have to catch up on, as well as, listening to interviews. And then obviously we have a lot of season previews coming up, which is super exciting. And, we're getting geared up for a lot of content coming up here. And you can listen to any of those episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And go ahead and when you find us on those platforms, follow, subscribe, or like, and turn on notifications so you get notified when those episodes come out. And if you're on social media, you'll also be notified when episodes come out if you follow us on Playmaker's Corner on Instagram, Facebook, and on TikTok. We also share clips. We're also on Twitter at Playmaker Corner. So be sure to follow or subscribe to us on all of those platforms so that way you do get to see when new episodes come out. And then also we post our episodes to YouTube as well. So you can go ahead and listen to the audio there and subscribe to us there. That's a lot of platforms to follow us on. It's just the weapon of choice. So be sure to check us out on all of those to catch up on former culture episodes and to pay attention to more football content. As for today, on this episode that was recorded on June 17th, and I think this is the first episode we've recorded where I can say congratulations on the 2023 champion Denver Nuggets. I've been your co-host, Cody Stauffer.
And I have been your other host, Simon Royanos, aka Coach V of Parenting's Corner. And we will catch you later.